So, hi Roger. We have the pleasure of welcoming you to our interview series. I am Drishti Shah from the Engati team, and let's begin with a quick intro of Engati. So, Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform, which is available across 14 channels with 25,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. We run the Engati blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 300,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Roger Dooley is a world-renowned author, marketing professional, keynote speaker, and recognized expert in the use of brain and behavior research to improve marketing, sales, customer service, and corporate culture. His books include Friction, the untapped force that can be your most powerful advantage, and Brain Fluence, 100 ways to persuade and convince consumers with Neuro-Marketing. Hi, welcome, Roger. We are really thrilled to have you here.
Well, thanks, Trisha. I really appreciate your inviting me on this recording.
Yeah. So, would like to start with the first question that I have. So, why neuromarketing, and what specifically piqued your interest in this field?
Well, I can trace it all the way back to my college days, which was a long time ago. And then I was studying engineering, but I had two kind of strange interests. One was psychology. I minored in psychology, and the other was advertising. When I was supposed to be in the library studying differential equations, instead, I would be reading Advertising Age. And really, I set those interests aside for many years. Eventually got into a direct marketing business, brought me more into the marketing space. But probably about 15 years ago now, I saw a couple of areas coming together, neuroscience and marketing. And I wasn't the only person to see that. There were already a few early neuromarketing service providers then, but I found it fascinating. I started writing about it. And the more I wrote about it, the more I got interested in it. And the more my readers ended up kind of steering me a little bit in what they found interesting. So in addition to sort of the tools of pure neuroscience, tools like EEG or fMRI for measuring brain activity, I found that incorporating behavioral science into my thinking was really important, because that way I could offer people ideas that they could use in their business directly without having to resort to expensive testing.
That is right. So, psychology in your thing, and you coupled it with that.
Too, because the important thing about neuromarketing is that you cannot always ask people what they think about your product, whether they're going to buy a particular product, and expect to get an accurate answer. Sometimes people just don't want to tell you the truth, but many times they simply can't tell you the truth because they don't know themselves. They don't know why they did something. They can't explain it. If they give you an answer, it probably won't be the real reason. And they have a lot of difficulty predicting their future behavior. We all do. If people say, if this product were available and it's going to be 6 months from now, would you buy it? That will not be an accurate answer under any circumstances, because we simply can't predict our future behavior that well. So what neuromarketing does is gives you a way to sort of peer beneath that surface and understand what people really think.
Right. That is right. That is true. One major reason why neuromarketing, has an edge over others. Okay, so how can the combination of AI and neuromarketing can be applied to improve something as critical as, personalization in customer experience?
Well, one of the issues in neuromarketing studies is that they generate a lot of data, massive amounts of data that are coming off equipment that's measuring whether it's brainwave activity or facial expressions or anything else. There's a lot of data being generated, and the difficulty lies in interpreting that data. I mean, everybody would argue that, for instance, an EEG is an accurate device, but where the hard part comes in is interpreting those tens of thousands of data points and turning them into an understanding of did this person react in a positive way to our advertisement or to our new product? And what does that mean? And trying to sort of tease that information out. So AI has the ability to learn to crunch this data better and develop interpretations that end up corresponding with actual human behavior. And beyond that, I think AI is very useful in tools that aren't specifically neuromarketing, but things like behavioral analytics, where you're generating a massive amount of consumer behavior data on websites and mobile apps and trying to find where people are getting stuck, particularly if you've got tens or hundreds of thousands of products to deal with, is very difficult. And AI can dig into that data and find that one product out of 100,000 where people are getting stuck, and maybe at least point it out for some human analysis. Say, okay, we notice that people are buying this on the website, but they are not buying it in the mobile app. Right. This seems strange, and then a human can look at it and figure out why that is.
That is right. Yeah. So, but like you said right now, that if you want to capture behavior of somebody who is using a mobile app or a website, so how do you think neuromarketing would play a role there? Because they are not like physically present. So fMRI or EEG.
No. I think through, for example, facial expression monitoring would be one way. I think that that is getting increasingly sophisticated and possible to do with simple devices. It doesn't require slow motion video cameras anymore and that sort of special equipment. It can be done using device cams, eye tracking as well. And that kind of data can be analyzed using digital tools like AI. So I think that's, and then of course, analyzing their behavior too. Just are they scrolling? Are they clicking? Are they clicking things that aren't clickable? And and so on and so on.
Right. So combining both of these can generate good data from the raw data that we have.
Yes, scaling human observation is difficult. If you've got thousands of customers, having a human observe all those thousands of customers isn't really practical. But right. Having some kind of filter through AI or similar tools that can turn into something manageable that then a human can study and say, okay, this seems to be a problem for 20% of the users. Why is that? Let's look at that in detail.
That is right. That is true. So statistically, data coming in can be interpreted much easily by the user than going through each individual behavior.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay. So coming to the books that you have on your bookshelf right now, the friction one, and so that is, I think, the best-selling book. So how do you think businesses can use neuromarketing to spot points of friction and alter them to create a customer-centric environment that results in loyal customers and engaged employees?
Okay, well, the key idea in friction that underlies the entire book, and it covers a lot of ground. It covers customer experience, employee experience, personal habit formation, and even success of regions and nations. But the theme that underlies everything is that human effort changes behavior. So if you require more effort from people, that will change the way they behave. And of course, in customer experience, it's pretty widely recognized these days that when you can take friction out of that experience, you will convert more, you will sell more, you'll get more customers. It's recognized that you can sometimes, even by adding friction, steer behavior a little bit. So if you're getting too many low-quality leads, you can add a little bit of friction, add a few fields to your form, and that will qualify them a little bit better and cut down on the low-quality leads. So friction is a tool that marketers can use everywhere. But to answer your question, is how do we find these points of friction? And there are different ways. One is, of course, by observing people. I talked about measuring facial expressions. It's called facial coding, and AI is being applied to that. And if you can observe your customers using your mobile app, using your website, you can see when they get frustrated, when they start frowning, when they appear puzzled or angry. those are cues that something is causing friction in that experience. And the same thing applies to your own people internally. There are a few people who are trying to apply this, say, to internal tools like, say, a management dashboard that managers are supposed to consult to monitor their business by looking at where their eyes are going, what their facial expressions are. That can tell you whether they're finding the tool easy to use and they're using it properly, or if they're frustrated by it, because managers are humans too, and if they find a tool frustrating or confusing, they won't use it. They'll do something else. So I think there are a lot of ways to analyze that behavior, but going back to that same thing of looking at people's emotions as well as just looking at their behaviors. If somebody is clicking 5 times to accomplish a task where you think that they only need to click once, then there's probably something wrong with your user experience, and that needs more attention.
But like you said, that facial coding that might be more interpretable as you can see emotions. But how difficult is it to navigate where the user is looking at, like on the screen or somewhere? How difficult is that?
That's called eye tracking. And eye tracking used to, again, require special, very expensive devices. And the best eye tracking studies still do use, say, eye tracking glasses that are quite expensive. But you can do simple eye tracking using webcams and device cams. And with the user's permission, you can't be surreptitiously videoing your customers and not telling them. But you can see where people are looking, and are they looking at what they're supposed to? Are they, when they're supposed to take an action, are they finding that action easily, or are they confused and are they trying to maybe click something that they're not supposed to, or touch a place on the screen that you didn't expect them to touch?
So, can we say that neuromarketing, has 2 major dimensions? One where there are physical products that the user might be consuming, and something else which is online, and we can have those.
I wouldn't make that distinction. I think that neuromarketing looks at how people react to a different stimuli. And now, obviously, an in-person experience is going to be different than an online experience.
Right.
There's been some fascinating studies done even of the exact same advertising in paper form. In other words, a tangible piece of paper that you can hold versus seeing that exact same ad in the exact same size on a digital screen. And in those cases, it showed that the tangible paper ad created a greater emotional impact and was a little bit more memorable than the digital ad. So there are differences between in-person experience where you have multiple senses involved and a digital experience where you have mostly 2 senses involved. You've got sight for sure and maybe sound. So there are differences, but I think the ultimate purpose of neuromarketing studies is the same: to dig beneath the surface and find out what people really think, how they really react to things.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Okay, so now coming down to something like conversational agents. So do you think that these can be a good solution to eliminate the friction that consumers face in areas of customer support and retention?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they can. And the reason I say that, I've had my own experiences with online agents, both good and bad. And first of all, I'll qualify this by saying, if I have an opportunity to interact with a brand, I'm trying to buy a product, say, or I want more information about a product, I will always choose, say, an online chat option versus calling into to their phone line. I find that, if I have to call a phone number, I will. But to me, that always involves more effort, involves another device than the one I'm using. Plus, then I have to sort of pay attention to it and so on. And so I will always try and solve my problem online before I resort to some other method. And so I've had several different experiences just in the last few months. One was I was buying a computer from Dell Computers, and I couldn't find a particular specification. And it should have been easy for me to find on the website, but for whatever reason, I couldn't find that. So I opened up their little chatbot, who is called Ava, I think is her name, and asked her, what is the weight of this particular model number? And immediately she responded with the correct answer and really the exact information I was looking for. So for me, that was took all of the friction out of that experience compared to either hunting around on the website for another 5 minutes, because I would have found it eventually. I'm sure that information was there someplace, or calling on the phone, which would have been a higher friction experience. But at the same time, there are certainly bad chatbot implementations where you ask a question and it says, oh, I think you mean this. And it gives you 3 things that are not related to what you're searching for. And you try rephrasing again and again. And that just wastes time. So, I mean, to me, a well-designed chatbot can relieve the load from human customer service people. But I think, to me, I think the ideal situation is where the chatbot is a gateway to human contact. So instead of people going directly to the queue for chat, a good chatbot may be able to answer a significant number of questions. But I think the mistake that many companies make, and it's true not just with chatbots, but it's true with voice menu systems. They try and solve your problem using automation before you bother one of their humans. And sometimes they make that initial interaction so difficult and time-consuming that it's really annoying. And to me, that's a mistake. You want to give people the opportunity quickly to solve their problem, and maybe they can. If I'm calling my bank and I want my account balance, maybe I get a voice menu, and the second option is check your balance, press 2. I will do that because that's simple and fast. But if I have to listen to 9 different options and none of them are what I'm looking for, or maybe I have to go to another menu and listen to another 9 options, then that really gets annoying. So to me, a chatbot is a great way online to solve problems quickly. And, I think that I'm not an expert in chatbot AI. I assume that your company is, but if you can look at when people are answered quickly and they seem to be satisfied with the answer versus when they have to keep rephrasing questions and trying different things to get what they're looking for, that is true, in any situation. And I think an example too that isn't bot-like, it's in site search. Site search is so important for e-commerce companies in particular, but really for any company. And often I find that I have to search 3 or 4 times before I manage to get the exact syntax of what I'm looking for, right? And start showing me what I want. And if somebody is analyzing these, whether it's AI or human, saying, okay, gee, people are conducting 3.5 searches before they seem satisfied, that's a clue that there's something wrong and it needs to be improved.
Right, that is true. So do you think that in this ongoing pandemic that we have right now, conversational agents are, really being helpful to people?
Well, I think they can be, because right now 100% of interaction is online. And, we're simply not visiting retail stores now. So, I think companies that were ahead of the curve, and some companies already had pretty advanced systems for online ordering, for scheduling pickups and scheduling deliveries and all these things. Those companies that were ahead of the curve now are doing well, where the companies that were not well prepared and had systems that really didn't function all that well, but they thought, well, only 5% of our customers are using this, so it's not that important. Suddenly they're finding out that 100% of their customers are using this, and it really is important. So, to me, these are the kinds of systems that you really need to be focused on developing in advance, not until the need is pressed upon you by external circumstances.
That is true. What do you think are the key aspects and focus areas where, applying this approach would make a business better?
Well, Drishti, explain what you mean by this approach. A more neuromarketing informed approach, or?
Yeah, neuromarketing, conversational AI,
right.
All this applied together.
Well, it really comes back to sort of understanding your customer, what they want, and then also communicating with them effectively. Uh, you know, customers get to where you went to a website to buy something and you couldn't figure out something about the product. It was something you just couldn't answer from the description, or there was some kind of a breakdown in the ordering process. You just got frustrated and left. To me, understanding where your customers are encountering those friction points, regardless of the tool that you use to find those points, whether it's observing behavior, whether it's giving them the opportunity to chat with a bot or a human, where they can express what they're trying to figure out. That is really the key to success. And then not only solving that individual customer's problem, but then understanding why the customer required that solution and making changes so that every other customer doesn't have that same issue.
Right.
You know, when a customer says, I couldn't figure out how to do X, and maybe your chatbot's got a great answer for it, which is wonderful if they can, and that saves a human having to tell that customer what to do. But if that is a common enough question that the chatbot has learned a good response to it, maybe there is a change that needs to be made in the interface, in the user interface, the customer interface, so that that doesn't even it doesn't become a question at all. They simply understand what they have to do.
Right.
Well, customer, you know what their behavior is. Then, of course, you can target them with appropriate messaging and products. And I see companies at both ends of this spectrum. Office Depot is a major office supply retailer here in the U.S. I have a store that's only maybe 10 minutes away from my house. So when I was shopping in person, I would go there if I needed office supplies immediately, that I couldn't even wait till, say, the next day. And they email me every day with totally undifferentiated offers. In other words, these are emails that do not appear to be targeted at my interests at all. If they are targeted, they're so badly targeted that I can't tell that they're targeted. So to me, that is a great waste of my time, because every day I have to delete their email without even opening it. And so eventually I get mad at them and I unsubscribe. And then I buy something again and they put me back on the list and I have to do it again. Amazon, on the other hand, is great at measuring all my behavior, things I've purchased, things I've looked at, things I have on my wish list or in my shopping shopping list.
Yes.
And they use these tools to give me offers that are very relevant to my needs. Now, they're not perfect. Sometimes if I bought a suitcase, a couple of days later, I'm going to see, hey, here are suitcases for you, Roger, not recognizing the fact that a suitcase is not a daily purchase. If I bought one, I don't need another one, hopefully for at least a few years. But by and large, they do a great job of giving me very relevant information based on my behavior. So to me, I do not delete their emails. I often look at them simply because I know that, okay, maybe I was looking at something and I forgot about it. I was interrupted. Maybe I want to buy it today. And so to me, that's the difference between companies that are doing a great job of personalizing offers, and because that personalized offer is less intrusive. And then probably the other thing I would say is that understanding how your customer is responding to those emails. Because one thing that always surprised me is that even though I delete all those Office Depot emails, they never reduce the frequency. They just keep sending to me every day. Now, to me, it would be smart to say, gee, the customer has not opened the last 42 emails. Maybe I will send them one per week now and see what happens. Or do something like that. Look at the behavior and then adjust your own behavior. And I don't know what Amazon does in that regard, but I would guess they probably do that too. They probably see how you respond to their emails, and they may give you more of something if you seem to respond and less of something else if you don't.
Yeah, that is true. But like you said, that 95% of decisions made are non-consciously. So how do business leverage non-conscious decision making, and how should they go about it?
The topic of my first book, Brainfluence, and there are many, many ways to influence behavior non-consciously. And a lot of companies are already very well versed in this. If you go to a travel website like Booking.com or Expedia, for example, you will see all kinds of non-conscious cues that are based on behavioral science. They use scarcity. They'll show you that there are only 2 seats left at this price, only 1 room left. They will use social proof, another influence principle. 47 people have booked this hotel in the last 2 days. And so there are dozens and dozens, or probably even hundreds of techniques. My Brainfluence has 100 chapters in it, if that's any indication. I did not cover every possibility. Certainly, there are undoubtedly many hundreds more. So all of these can be ways of influencing behavior using non-conscious drivers. And my second book, Friction, focused on one major thing, which was basically making that thing easier. It's one of the simplest behavioral hacks out there. If you want customers to do something, you make it easier. Richard Thaler, a Nobel Prize winner, won his prize basically from that simple concept. I mean, it sounds like such a like too simple of a concept to be the subject of serious academic research. But in fact, they found that they could really solve really important social problems. Like in the US, we have a retirement system that often involves, in fact, these days, almost everybody opts into an employer retirement plan. They aren't automatically enrolled. It's not, or at least they haven't been. You signed up for this plan, and typically it was a good benefit. The company would often give you some additional money when you signed up for it, so it was good. But often 2/3 of the people who were eligible didn't do it because they just put it off, they forgot, whatever. So a very simple behavioral hack was to opt people in automatically. In other words, when you join the company, they tell you, okay, as soon as you're eligible, you're going to be opted into the plan. You're going to be opted in at this level of contribution, which is the level that the company matches. And if you want to not do that, you can fill out a simple form and you can opt out. They aren't coercing the person to participate, but just that simple change causes millions more people to enroll in the plans and preserve their own retirement, which is really an important thing in this country. Our Social Security system from the government is not meant to be your only source of income because it's not enough money to have a good lifestyle on. It's for people who, really that's all they have. And so, that applies to businesses as well. When you make things easy for people to do, they are more likely to do those things. Amazon is basically founded on that principle. Jeff Bezos has said, when you reduce friction, when you make something easy, people do more of it. That's why he makes it so easy to buy stuff on Amazon.com.
That is true. That is true. And that is why, some buying is so impulsive, just because you can easily have a look at it and just purchase it. It's right. Not that difficult.
One-click button. Amazon patented one-click ordering back in 1998. That was people didn't think they could even patent something that simple, but they did. It was granted. Then they got in a big legal fight with Barnes & Noble, who at the time, the big bookseller was their major competitor. Barnes & Noble implemented one-click ordering of their own version on their site, and they got in a legal fight with Amazon. Amazon spent millions of dollars on legal fees to defend one-click ordering. And ultimately, they prevailed. And all they succeeded in doing by spending millions of dollars, was to force their competitors to add one tiny little click to their ordering process, one little click. And there was one other smart person in that same time who did not fight the patent, didn't try and develop a technical workaround, and that was Steve Jobs, CEO at Apple then. They were launching their music store, and Apple paid Amazon $1 million to use one-click they saw Apple and have prospered.
I really not, know about that company, but Amazon and Apple is like the hugest company on the planet.
Well, yeah, in the U.S., and I'm not sure how big their global footprint was, but Barnes & Noble was by far the biggest book I mean, they had
Wow.
they had a few smaller competitors, but they had giant bookstores all around the country. Big stores where people went to buy books, drink coffee, and buy games and other stuff. And they've experienced a long period of decline.
Right. Evidently. Yeah. So that does help, but actually having a good user experience, just focusing on how easy it would be for the user to buy, and it's
Hmm.
going to increase your business development and sales. That is pretty simple. It is very easy to understand right now, but somebody who had this vision and has implemented it before are just seeing heights in business
Yeah, well,
development.
before I wrote Friction, I was talking to people about the idea, and I had multiple people say, "Oh, everybody knows about that. Everybody has already eliminated friction." And I said, "No, I don't think so, because if everybody knew about it and acted on it, we wouldn't have all of the bad customer experience that we
Right.
experience every day today."
Every day.
We see a few companies that are really good at customer experience, and so many others that are not. And so it is. People may know about it or think they know about it, but they are not acting on it, and that's
Yeah.
part of it too. You can't say, "Well, yeah, we know we should fix that, but it's just too expensive to fix it now," or "We'll do that, in the future sometime." If there's a problem, and you don't see that from Jeff Bezos at Amazon, if there is a problem in their customer experience, they will fix it immediately.
Immediately,
Not
yes.
and he's basically said the shareholders can wait. If he says, "I'm not going to manage the company to benefit the shareholders. I'm going to manage it to benefit the customer. And
Customers.
if I do that right, the shareholders will be fine." And the shareholders have done very well at Amazon.
Yeah, that is true. They actually have this thing, like if you just tweet for some problem and they immediately send you a message saying that please let me know how I can help you, and that's amazing.
Yep. They do a great job, and one thing they do too that I think is important and other companies could learn from is they test continuously. At any given moment, Amazon is specs of their customer experience. And you can see this sometimes if you really pay attention, because, if you ask somebody, when was the last time Amazon redesigned their website? I think, I don't know, maybe never, because it seems like it's always been the same. But in fact, if you compare today with, say, 10 years ago, you will find lots of tiny little changes that all happen one at a time, because they are constantly testing. When they find something that works, they implement that, and it's an evolutionary process. And so many companies say, "Wow, our website is 5 years old. We need to redesign it," and they'll do this sort of big bang design change. And I'll say, "Wow, that was difficult. That was expensive. Thank goodness it's over with. We won't have to do that for a few years." Instead of saying, "You've just begun the work now. Now you need to keep refining and testing."
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So, like I was saying, so how do you think, like you gave an example with brain fluence concept that is there, that people, do not have this very, what I can say, non-conscious buying that we have. So it is very easy to push that in something like a B2C product. But how do you think B2B can, leverage that kind of opportunity in their businesses?
Well, Drishti, that's a question I get asked often. I speak to and do workshops for B2B companies, and they say, "Well, yeah, all that influence stuff works fine on consumers, but our customers are businesses. They aren't influenced by extraneous factors. For them, it's all price and delivery and very rational factors." And in fact, what I tell them all is that that is true to a point, but all of those B2B customers are humans as well.
Yeah.
And their motivations are not always what you think they are. That B2B buyer may be, they are looking for the lowest price. And if you're not the lowest price, then you're not going to get the deal. But in fact, they have, that buyer does not want to be the buyer that bought the lowest priced product that ended up shutting down the manufacturing process because the product wasn't good, or because the unreliable vendor failed to deliver on time. That buyer has motivations of his own or her own. They want to advance in their company. They want to preserve their job. First of all, they don't want to be fired because something went wrong. And so a B2B seller should focus on the security and the advancement of those buyers. What do they really look for? What's going to help them in their situation? And of course, they respond to the same cues like scarcity. If a B2B buyer finds out that, there's a limited supply of these things in stock, and it's going to be a month before there are more in stock, they are probably more likely to buy then, simply because they don't want to risk missing out. And so many of those same influence factors that work on consumers also work on B2B buyers. And a couple of other examples. Another principle, and originally six principles of influence were created by Robert Cialdini. He wrote about them in his book Influence, that's now 30 plus years old. He added a seventh about probably 2 or 3 years ago now. But I mentioned scarcity, that's one of those. A social proof, seeing what other people are doing. If a B2B buyer sees that other companies are buying that product, then that is that's social proof. And that will help them subconsciously say, okay, this vendor is reliable. Authority is another Cialdini principle. If a person who is an authority on a topic, who is an expert in that field, endorses something, then other people will think it is a good product. So when I was writing my book Friction, I asked Robert Cialdini himself to endorse my book, and he was kind enough to do that. It's his testimony is on the cover because he is an authority in the space of human behavior. And so many of my buyers are business buyers. They're not necessarily consumers. And so to me, that I'm using authority there. And authority, too, isn't always an expert. It can be a celebrity. So, if you get LeBron James, the world's most famous basketball player, to endorse a non-basketball product, people will still view that as some kind of authority. Maybe he's not an expert in that particular field, but wow, he's rich, he's famous, and chances are he wouldn't be endorsing that product if it wasn't good. So, you can leverage all of these types of tools that we think of as affecting just individual people like consumers, but they work just as well for B2B sellers.
Right. So, what are the advice you would give someone on the leveraging technology at the startup level to build a great successful business?
Well, I think technology and startups really kind of go together because I've been around long enough to remember our sort of pre-digital age where we did not have ready access to the internet, and everybody didn't have a super smart device in their pocket or on their desktop or both. And starting up a business was pretty difficult. You had to have physical facilities. You could not have virtual teams. You had to typically interact with your customers in person or maybe by telephone. And that was all not so easy. But in the digital world, you can leverage technology in so many different ways to build your team, to reach your customers. And people really don't know. You may be one person operating in your basement or something. And, if you do a good enough job with your digital persona, your digital presence, if you, build a good digital team using some of the tools like we're connecting with now halfway across the planet, you can have team members any place. And all those things really are a great advantage for a startup and allow startups to do things at much lower cost than they would have previously. So, I think that you've got a startup has to look at leveraging technology in every aspect of its business.
That is true. But like you said, that the previously founded organizations had a difficult time, setting up businesses. But still people are very hesitant to adopt technology in their business, and they think that it's expensive or maybe not necessary. So how do you think they can be, convinced to come on the better side?
Well, actually, if you look at the overall field of customer experience, the return on customer experience improvements is often very hard to estimate. In other words, you know that this is affecting your customer experience, but trying to produce actual numbers that you can go to the CFO and the CEO with and say, okay, we need to invest this sum of money, and it's going to produce this larger sum of money within 12 months, is pretty difficult to do accurately. I mean, so I think what you have to do is do your best job to estimate what could the benefits be from this. In other words, if you have existing sales, how much might sales increase if you invested in this technology or these customer experience improvements?
Right.
And you can try and find parallels within other companies. Perhaps this is what they're doing, this is what we're doing, and we are not as good as they are, so we think that we're losing sales to them. There's not any easy answer to that, Drishti. I wish there was, because if you were, say, investing in a machine for a factory, you can come up with great numbers because that machine is probably going to replace an older machine or a less efficient machine. And you know what the new one costs, and you know that its output is going to be 50% higher. And you can run very accurate calculations that it'll pay back in 6 months or 18 months or whatever. But you just can't do that with customer experience. The numbers are never that precise. So you just have to do your best. And also, I think you have to kind of approach it the way Jeff Bezos does. And if this is going to make customer experience better, then we should do it. If it's not going to bankrupt the company, then we should do this thing, because in the long run, our better customer experience is going to give us an advantage that other companies don't have. Because other companies have just not invested in their customer experience the way Amazon has. Last year, they hit just about the 50% mark of all e-commerce sales, and their market share actually grew 10%, even though all these other companies are finally getting smarter. I mean, you've got companies like Walmart, a huge global retailer who is investing billions in improving their logistics to match Amazon's and their digital marketing to match Amazon's. Despite this, Amazon still increased their market share last year, and their sales were up 20%. So, if you just invest in that customer experience based on the faith that it will work, you really have to do that. You have to take it on faith.
Yeah, that is true. Just so I've heard that customer centricity is the goal in 2020, and maybe the pandemic has affected a larger part of it, but I think people who have adopted technology are doing a pretty good job at it. I haven't heard people are coping up with working from home, and also using such technology and tools to help their customers, and trying to bring in the customer centricity goal that was to be set in the 2020. But yeah, people who are not using it and haven't thought about how they would treat the customers before are facing some problems.
Definitely.
Yeah. So any sound bites that you would like to leave our viewers with?
Well, I think the fundamental idea in my book Friction is that human effort changes their behavior, and that you need to make things easy in every possible way. You need to find those, not just the obvious friction points, but the ones that are hidden in your customer experience. And that will bring you closer to being like Jeff Bezos and Amazon.
Right. That is true. Okay, so thank you so much, Roger. It was great talking to you. Your insights, I think, will help our viewers also, leverage technology and bring in digital transformation in their businesses, and hopefully have a better leap in their business development. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Drishti. It's been a lot of fun.